Honourable David Cunliffe. Order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, how will to the Minister of Finance?
Order. Now order. I've called the Honourable David Cunliffe and he'll be shown some respect. The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, how will Budget 2010 create jobs and reduce the cost of living for hard-working New Zealanders?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, in many ways it will support growth by getting the economy back to saving, exporting and investing, rather than relying on borrowing and government spending. It will provide better frontline public services, particularly in health and education. It will continue the government's multi-billion-dollar investment in infrastructure, supporting jobs and growth. It will control public debt and it will deliver a fairer and more incentivised tax system.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Speaker, why did his government gut KiwiSaver and defer New Zealand super fund savings when the Australian government has further increased its rate of compulsory savings? And why doesn't he follow Australia's example and increase government contributions to KiwiSaver?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, just with respect to the Australian decision on on their superannuation contributions, they're talking about a 3 percentage point increase over 10 years. We expect to do much better than that. We expect New Zealand wage earners to have in their hand much sooner than that a bigger increment where they have a choice as to whether they save it in KiwiSaver or save it in some other way.
Chris Tremaine.
To the Minister of Finance, how will Budget 2010 outlook compare with that of 18 months earlier?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, fortunately this budget will be prepared against the background of 12 months of sound management by this government rather than 9 years of mismanagement by that government. In October 2008, the pre-election forecast showed net debt climbing rapidly. By December 2008, the forecast showed net debt soaring past 50% of GDP and permanent deficits. This budget, we won't have to take action to improve that kind of mismanagement.
Honourable David Cunliffe.
Speaker, why when New Zealand's unemployment is rising and Australia's is falling, is he still doing the opposite of Australia, raising GST, cutting contributions to the super fund and removing incentives to save?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member is wrong about some of those things. We're putting together a budget and a tax package that are going to be suitable for the needs of the New Zealand economy. And unfortunately, the New Zealand economy was managed badly for 9 years. The previous government squandered the opportunities, the best opportunity of economic growth in a generation, and we have to fix it. The Australian government doesn't.
Point of order. Mr Speaker.
Order. But he's raised the point of order. He's called a point of order. No, he's called a point of order.
Mr Speaker.
No, he has called a point of order and I must hear it. I have to do that. The Honourable David Order.
Mr Speaker.
Order. The member had better have a good point of order.
Mr Speaker, to recall the preceding point of order with the same minister in question one, Mr Speaker, you have ruled that historical references to a former government are in bounds where they are succinct and related to the question asked. You have further ruled that hypothetical references to another party's policies are out of bounds. Mr Speaker, this minister has, in his reply to this question, tried to reinterpret the historical record, making up stories about the previous government's performance, and sir, that would be out of bounds of the earlier ruling you made today.
I don't think we need to take further. If the member thinks back to his question, he asked the minister for his opinion about something. Why is the government doing this or that? And the minister has to have some licence in answering a question that is asking for his opinion. And I can't rule that the minister give a particular opinion. He's going to give his opinion. And sometimes when ministers are asked for their opinions, members may get answers that are not exactly what they want to hear. And I believe the reference he's made so far was not ascribing any particular policies to Labor. He was giving his opinion about previous policies. And I think the minister is entitled to do that when he's asked for his opinion. Has the minister finished his answer? I think we should go on then. Supplementary question.
Speaker, why, unlike Australia, will this minister not roll out a real plan for jobs and growth, such as creating more than 1,200 jobs by building train carriages for Auckland's electrification project?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as has been explained, the business of building those trains is reasonably sophisticated. You wouldn't expect the taxi company to suddenly decide to manufacture its own cars in New Zealand. And in the end, the Kiwi Rail Board will make that decision. What is clear is that the Kiwi Rail are going to need to renew their rolling stock. They have the capacity to do that, and perhaps their workshop should focus on something that is within their capacity where they can be competitive.
Chris Tremaine.
To the Minister of Finance, what economic recipe would see hard-working New Zealanders lose their jobs and increase their cost of living?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, the kind of recipe that would have that effect for New Zealanders would be a government that set out to borrow a whole lot more money, spend it on low effectiveness public services, raise taxes and leave a lot of debt for future workers to pay back. That recipe is the one promulgated by Phil Goff and his finance spokesman.
Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Well, Mr Speaker, I think we couldn't have had a clearer example of a breach of your ruling from earlier in the day than that. That was there was not one part of that reply that was within the areas of responsibility of the Minister of Finance as he finished it and made it clear.
Order. The great bulk of his answer was absolutely within standing orders. It was the last bit that he shouldn't have ascribed. But this is a political chamber. I mean, if he had gone on, I'd have absolutely cut him off. But for goodness sake, he only had about 5 words that were what I'd consider being breached there. The most part of his answer was describing policies that he believed would be the wrong recipe. And okay, then he did transgress in suggesting those are what Labor's promoting. But then, we can't divorce this place from political exchange. And members are asking further order, but I've heard several ministers, particularly the minister, the spokesperson on finance, asking questions where he has inserted his view about things into the question. And that's the dilemma and I don't think I should try to stop that, because after all this is a political debating chamber, and I try to make sure that transgressions don't go over the top, that if the minister continued to ascribe a whole lot of particular policies to Labor, I'd have stopped him, because the minister has no right to do that. Is that the end of question number 6? We go then to question number 7. Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is